Featuring special savings on specially equipped Fury, Valiant, Barracuda, and Belvedere models.
Most people who love muscle cars can name the Road Runner. They can name the Charger. They can probably even name the Super Bee's bigger, flashier cousins without thinking twice. But ask them about the car that Dodge built, on purpose, to be the cheap one. The stripped-down, no-frills bruiser that Dodge engineers were almost embarrassed to put their name on. Almost nobody remembers it. It had a rubber floor mat instead of carpet, bare-bones gauges, no hidden headlights, no Hollywood movie deal, no cartoon mascot on a license plate. And today, a documented example of this same forgotten Dodge is selling for $80,000 to $120,000 at auction. Some have crossed $200,000. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why a car nobody wanted in the 1980s is now one of the smartest plays in the entire muscle car market. This is the story of the Dodge Coronet Super Bee. The origin, built to undercut the Road Runner. Back in 1967, Plymouth had a problem to solve. Muscle cars were getting expensive, loaded with options, chrome, and luxury trim that pushed prices higher every year. Plymouth's answer was the Road Runner, a stripped-down, big-engine, no-nonsense muscle car built around one idea: maximum punch for minimum price. They even licensed the actual cartoon character and horn sound from Warner Brothers. It was a sensation. Dodge, sharing the same corporate parent, needed an answer. And here's where things get interesting. Dodge took their mid-size Coronet, a fairly conventional, unglamorous sedan platform, and built their own version of the formula. They called it the Super Bee, debuting partway through the 1968 model year. The name came from the B-body platform it was built on. B for Bee. Standard equipment was a 383 cubic inch V8 rated at 335 horsepower, paired with a 4-speed manual. Keep the trim level honest, keep the engine big, and price it to move. Sticker price was right around $3,000, about $26,000 in today's money. The Super Bee got bumblebee stripes across the tail, rally wheels, and simple Scat Pack badging. No fake hood scoops for show. No chrome you didn't need. Just a Coronet with attitude. But here's where things get interesting. Engines, specifications, and the A12 monster. Halfway through the 1969 model year, Dodge did something that nobody expected from the budget Mopar. They added the 440 six-pack. 3 two-barrel carburetors stacked on top of a massive 440 cubic inch big block through a special order code called the A12 package. This wasn't a subtle upgrade. The A12 Super Bee came with a matte black lift-off fiberglass hood with a functional scoop, black steel wheels with no hubcaps, and a Dana 60 rear axle with 4.10 gears. It made 390 horsepower and 490 pound-feet of torque, numbers that on the street could match a Hemi car stride for stride, 0 to 60, in 5.5 seconds, quarter mile, in the low 13 seconds, for roughly half the price of ordering the Hemi option. And speaking of the Hemi, yes, you could get one. The 426 cubic inch street Hemi was available as the top-tier option, rated at 425 horsepower, but buyers rarely chose it. In 1969, only 166 Hemi Super Bees were built across the entire model year. By 1971, the last year of the original Super Bee, that number had dropped to just 22 Hemi cars total. 22 in the final year. That's rarer than several cars that have been commanding six-figure prices for decades. The Super Bee continued through 1971, when it moved off the Coronet platform entirely and became a trim level on the Charger instead, before disappearing altogether after that model year. Why it lived in the Road Runner's shadow. So if the Super Bee was this capable, why did almost nobody remember it? Image, pure and simple. The Road Runner had a cartoon character and a horn that honked like Looney Tunes. It had a built-in marketing machine before it even left the factory. The Dodge Charger had Hollywood, Bullet, the Dukes of Hazzard, a fastback silhouette that looked fast standing still. The Plymouth Barracuda had pony car good looks that drew direct comparisons to the Mustang. The Super Bee had a coronet body, conventional styling, a Spartan interior with rubber floor mats and basic gauges, no hidden headlights, no signature hood treatment on the base models. It was heavier than the Road Runner and slightly more expensive, which put it in an awkward position. Not cheap enough to be the obvious budget pick, not flashy enough to justify the extra money. Production numbers tell the story too. In 1969, Dodge sold a respectable but unspectacular run of Super Bees compared to the tens of thousands of Road Runners flying off Plymouth lots in the same period. The Super Bee simply never built the cultural machinery that turned its rivals into icons. For decades, that's exactly what doomed it. And ironically, it's exactly what's now driving its value. Through the 1980s and into the 1990s, Super Bees weren't collectibles. They were just old Dodges. While Road Runners and Chargers got preserved, restored, and featured in car magazines, Super Bees got driven hard, neglected, and sometimes scrapped outright. Big block engines got swapped into more desirable cars. Bodies rusted in driveways. Owners who couldn't get parts or interest from buyers let them sit. There's a well-documented account from a Mopar enthusiast who traveled over 4,000 miles up and down the East Coast searching for a clean Super Bee, through New Jersey, Connecticut, even into Kentucky, before discovering, almost as a joke from fate, that a solid 1968 example had been sitting just 15 miles from his own house the whole time. Parked, dusty, not running, but structurally sound. That's the kind of story that defines an entire generation of these cars. Overlooked, undervalued, and hiding in plain sight. By the time serious collectors started paying attention to Mopar muscle in the 2000s, the easy money had already been made on Road Runners and Chargers. The Super Bee was still sitting there, cheaper, just as capable, and quietly waiting. How it got forgotten. The lost decades. Through the 1980s and into the 1990s, Super Bees weren't collectibles. They were just old Dodges. While Road Runners and Chargers got preserved, restored, and featured in car magazines, Super Bees got driven hard, neglected, and sometimes scrapped outright. Big block engines got swapped into more desirable cars. Bodies rusted in driveways. Owners who couldn't get parts or interest from buyers let them sit. There's a well-documented account from a Mopar enthusiast who traveled over 4,000 miles up and down the East Coast searching for a clean Super Bee, through New Jersey, Connecticut, even into Kentucky, before discovering, almost as a joke from fate, that a solid 1968 example had been sitting just 15 miles from his own house the whole time. Parked, dusty, not running, but structurally sound. That's the kind of story that defines an entire generation of these cars. Overlooked, undervalued, and hiding in plain sight. By the time serious collectors started paying attention to Mopar muscle in the 2000s, the easy money had already been made on Road Runners and Chargers. The Super Bee was still sitting there, cheaper, just as capable, and quietly waiting. Today's auction numbers. The wake-up call. So let's talk about what changed. Sometime around 2005 to 2010, Hemi-equipped and 446-pack Super Bees started showing up at Barrett-Jackson and Mecum auctions, and the bidding crossed numbers that surprised even the people selling them. Cars that had changed hands for 5 figures in the 1990s were suddenly clearing $60,000 to $80,000. The scarcity argument finally clicked. With only 166 Hemi Super Bees built in 1969 and an unknown fraction surviving with original drivetrains. These cars were statistically harder to find than several models that had already been commanding 6-figure prices for years. Here's where the market sits today, broken down by engine. According to Haggerty's valuation data, a 1969 Super Bee with the standard 383 in good condition typically lands around $41,400. Push that same car to excellent condition, and you're at roughly $67,000. A true Concours quality example with the standard engine now carries a value of about $101,000. Step up to a numbers-matching 446-pack example with documented provenance, and the price climbs to $80,000 to $120,000, depending on condition and color. And the Hemi cars occupy a category of their own entirely. At a 2023 Mecum auction, a 1969 Hemi Super Bee sold for $214,500, a result that illustrates just how far this market has traveled from the $1,800 lap barn finds people were finding in the 1980s. The median price for a Super Bee across all engine types now sits near $49,000, with the highest verified Hemi sales well above $200,000. That's not a niche curiosity anymore. That's a real, documented market for a car most people forgot existed. Honest verdict: value play or pass? So, should you buy one? Here's my honest take. If you're priced out of a Charger RT or a Road Runner, but you still want real, documented, numbers-matching Mopar muscle from the golden era, the Super Bee is, in my opinion, the single smartest entry point left in this segment. A good condition 383 car at $40,000 to $55,000 gets you into a real piece of Mopar history with genuine upside, not a maxed-out price that's already priced in every bit of future appreciation. The 4406-pack cars are where I'd focus if your budget allows it. $80,000 to $120,000 for documented provenance puts you in a car with real performance, real rarity, and a story that most people at a car show still won't recognize, which, for serious collectors, is part of the appeal. The Hemi cars are a different conversation entirely. At $200,000 plus, you're buying one of the rarest production muscle cars Chrysler ever built. 166, made in 1969, down to just 22 by 1971. If you can find one, and afford one, that scarcity alone makes it a defensible long-term hold. One word of caution. Because the Super Bee was overlooked for so long, fewer of them received the meticulous documentation that's now critical to value. If you're shopping for one, prioritize cars with original broadcast sheets, fender tags, and Galen Gouvier or Frank Batelson-style verification. An undocumented Super Bee, even with the right numbers, will sell for significantly less than a verified one. My personal line: this is one of the last genuinely underpriced doors into serious 1960s Mopar muscle. I don't expect that door to stay open much longer. The Dodge Coronet Super Bee spent decades in the shadow of flashier Mopars. Today, it's quietly become one of the smartest plays in the entire muscle car market, and most people still don't know its name. I want to hear from you. Did you know the Super Bee existed before this video? Or is this the first time you've heard the name? And which other forgotten muscle car do you think deserves this same deep dive treatment? Drop it in the comments. A lot of upcoming videos on this channel start exactly there. If you're new here, we break down muscle car values, auction results, and forgotten Mopar history every single week. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. See you in the next video.